Hi there everyone, this is Chris here at the Virtual Couch. This is going to be our first tutorial video for our beta testers to guide them through the process of using our toolkit. This will also serve as a demonstration of what the toolkit is currently capable of. Please bear in mind that this is a beta and not the final release, so the workflow in the final release will be a little bit different, and also things are not as polished currently as they will be in the final release. With that in mind, let's go ahead and dive right in. First thing we're going to go ahead and do is make sure all our initial settings are correct. So we'll go ahead and go to Edit here and hit Project Settings. Wait for that to open up, and then go ahead and go down to Renderer and make sure that debuffer decals is checked. For all our beta testers, this should be the case. If not, go ahead and check that. We're going to close that, and that should be all we need to do for now. When you make a new level, you'll also want to go to Blueprints, Open Level Blueprint, and you'll want to make sure that tick rate up here is set to 0.016667. That is 1 divided by 60, so 60 frames per second. And then you can leave everything else set to defaults. So we go ahead and hop into the actual kit part of things. So you'll see there's a lot of folders here. Most of these you don't have to worry about. You'll just click on first person, and this is going to have all the stuff that you'll want. Go ahead and we'll go ahead and start by setting up our character in our game mode, and we'll go ahead and set up our weapons and bullets and all that in the next few episodes. So go ahead and go to Blank Blueprints. Now there's a couple different ways you can create your own class. You can either, the way I would recommend is going to Blank Blueprints, right-clicking, and clicking Create Child Blueprint. However, you can also go to C++ classes here and select that class and also create blueprint class based on that class. I would recommend sticking with Blank Blueprints for now, just because there's a couple classes here that are still in development and won't work at the moment. So we're going to go back to Blank Blueprints. We'll go ahead and start with our character. Go ahead and right click on him, create child blueprint class, and we'll call him my character. And we'll go ahead and open him up. And so we get a viewport here with a camera, an arrow, capsule. This isn't a character yet, so first thing we have to do is we can ignore most of these, and collapse all these down. So what you'll really want to worry about for the most part is this folder here called MP Character. This is going to have almost everything that you'll need to set up your character. So collapse all these so it's less cluttered. So the first thing we're going to go and do is select our meshes. So we're going to select our Mesh 1P. Mesh 1P is the first person mesh. It'll be a skeletal mesh, and most first person meshes are going to be essentially a pair of arms that's attached to the camera. And that's all that the character will see. Sometimes it'll be a pair of legs too, so when you look down you see your legs, but 90% of the time it's just going to be a pair of arms. So we'll go ahead and select that skeletal mesh. We'll go ahead and select SK Mannequin Arms. That's the default Unreal first person mesh. And now we've got that selected. Our arms are kind of like in this weird T pose. That's okay, because what we're going to do is go to animation up here. We're going to go and leave that as use animation blueprint, and we're going to go down here to anim class and choose first person anim blueprint, and that'll make that, now it shows up properly. That's what your character should look like. And that's all you're going to need to do for the first person mesh. Our third person mesh is a little more complicated, but not too bad. we're going to do the same thing first. We're going to go ahead and close these up first, and then we'll go ahead and go to mesh down here, and then select SK mannequin. You'll see two here. There won't be duplicates in the final, but in the beta there's going to be a couple duplicates. When you hover over it, it'll show you the path. Go ahead and select. I would recommend selecting the one that's in the Anim Starter Pack folder. That's a free pack on the marketplace provided by Epic that has a bunch of really great animations available for use. So go ahead and select that, and we'll go ahead and go up to animation, and we'll use the UE4ASP Hero TPP, the long one. So go ahead and select that, and now our character shows up. He's like floating in the air and he's sideways. That's fine though. What we're going to do is we're going to click on him, and we'll just go ahead and use this transform tool right here to go move him down so his head is about 2 clicks below the 1 click below the top of the capsule, and then we'll just go ahead and rotate him 90 degrees. And then lastly, we'll go ahead and go to component replicates here and check that. I'm going to close that mesh 3P up, and now we've got our meshes set up. So now what we need to do is, so you can set your own custom materials here for the character meshes. FP materials, arms, the TP material is the character body. So if you want to make your character out of some like gold or something like that, you could do that. We'll go ahead and leave those blank for right now as the defaults. And then we'll go ahead and go to TP gun, and we don't need to worry about anything here. All we need to do is go to component replicates and set that to true, and then same with muzzle location. So muzzle location is where the location of the muzzle is from the first person mesh. So that's where your muzzle flash will spawn, and also your bullets. We'll go ahead and set that to replicate. So now we've got this set up. We've got all our meshes are set up properly. So we can go and close this up. And now we're going to go to gameplay. And this is like what you want out of your character. Ignore these for now. These are actually going to be set in the game mode. I mean, you can adjust them, but they're not going to do anything. So Has default weapon is does your player start off with a weapon each time he spawns, or is he unarmed? So if it's unchecked, that means your character is just going to be unarmed. There's no weapon in front of the camera. He's just walking around like normal. If it is checked, then what you'll do is select a weapon from default weapon, and we're going to leave it unchecked for now. And when we make our weapon in the next episode, we'll come back to this and set a default weapon. These guys down here are just your varying sprint options. So these are all pretty self-explanatory. Can your character sprint? Can he fire while he's sprinting? Can he fire his weapon while he's sprinting? Can he reload while he's sprinting? All pretty self-explanatory. So we'll go ahead and check can sprint, and we'll leave the other two blank. Default walk speed is the speed that you walk at normally. I like to set that. You can probably leave it at 60. I personally prefer to set it at 65. You can set it to whatever you want. But 60, 65 seems to be a good normal walking speed. Your sprint multiplier is how fast that default speed gets, how much that gets multiplied by when you sprint. So if you hit 2.0, for example, when you start sprinting, you're going to be going twice as fast as you normally would. I'd prefer to set it usually around 1.5. You could set it to 100 or something crazy like that if you really wanted to. Crouch, slow divisor, that's just how much your movement gets divided by when you're crouching. So if you're crouching and it's set to 2, you would generally be moving at about half the speed that you normally would. We'll go and leave that at 2.0 for now, and we'll leave these as is. These are your inventory slots. So that's going to start off at, I usually leave this set at 10 max slots, because what's going to happen is you only have 10 keys, 1 through 0, to select your inventory. So it makes sense just to have it set at 10. You can set it higher or lower if you wanted to, but there's not really much purpose to it in my opinion. So we'll go ahead and close that out now that that's all set up. And we can go to HUD. This is where your heads-up display is going to be set up. So we're going to leave, so we've got a couple different options here. We've got Use Simple HUD, which is kind of it's a very stripped down, almost like printing to the console heads-up display. It's literally a block of text in the upper left corner that tells you everything you need to know, like your health and ammo in different colors, but it's just plain text. If we leave both of these unchecked, that means it'll use a 2D HUD, which has it's a lot more customizable. Like you'll be able to see, you can use your own font here. I like the set inside font, and you can set your message timer is so a message is something like a kill feed, right? So when you're playing like Call of Duty, it'll say, so and so was killed by X, or you picked up whatever weapon, or you picked up X rounds for whatever weapon. This controls how long they're left up on the screen. I usually like to do 2 seconds, and then you can select your message color. I usually like to set it to a greenish color personally. And 3D HUD is, rather than having a flat 2D heads-up display, what actually happens is you're going to have several different text render components that are attached to your camera, so they'll create this kind of illusion of having this 3D HUD that follows you around and reacts to your movement. It's actually really cool, but it is a little complicated to set up. We can go ahead and run through that though real quick. So if we want to do our heads-up display, our 3D HUD, go ahead and clear, you'll have a couple different 3D components. You'll have your health, ammo, your timer, so how much game time is left, player score, if it's a non-team game. If it is a team game, you'll have scores for team 1 and 2, and then you'll have your message text. So for each of these, what we're going to do is just set up, we'll go ahead and clear that initial text out, leave that blank, set that text material to, we can leave it as is for now. We don't really need to worry about that. So first, we'll just go through and essentially just clear that initial text out. When you're doing, so by default, the positions are health is on the bottom left, ammo is on the bottom right, and so you'll want to set that to right. Timer's on the top left, and the scores are going to be on the top right, and your message text is going to also be on the top left below the timer. You can generally play around with these. You can go to the transform tab and kind of play around with the locations, but I'll just leave it as is for right now. I'm going to set that to right, and we'll just do this for each one of these. To the right, and then clear that out to blank, and then just clear this guy out, and then we'll leave that as is for right now. I'll go and start with a 2D HUD, and then we'll turn on the 3D in just a moment. And then sound is the sounds that your character makes. So when your character gets hit, he'll play a sound. I usually like to do an impact sound. A lot of these sounds are going to be taken from Unreal Tournament. These are not included in the final release, but I'm using them here for demonstration purposes. Your character die sounds when your character dies. I usually like to use, there's a bio rifle sound that makes this kind of like splat effect because I don't have a scream sound. So go ahead and select that. Respawn timer sound, so when your respawn timer's counting down, every second it hits, it'll play the sound. So if you want to do like I have a couple respawn beeps that will be included. So we'll use beep 1 for the timer sound, and then respawn sound is when you actually get respawn, and we'll use respawn beep 2 for that. And then walking sound is like your footsteps. So this one you have to be careful of. When you select your sound, you want to make sure that you go into the sound, check those sound concurrency settings, and make sure those aren't set too low. Because if they're set too low, what's going to happen? So you'll want to hit override concurrency and set the max count to something higher than 1. And you'll want to also hit prevent new and limit to owner. Actually, this is just for the footsteps. Actually uncheck that if we want to have other people hear it. So yeah, leave that max count higher than 1 and prevent new for the resolution rule. Make sure you have that resolution rule set whenever you're doing a sound that will be played in rapid succession, like footsteps or like like machine guns, things like that. So we're going to save that, close it, and then select it in our character class. Stats, a lot of this is just going to be debug info that you can reference in the scene view. Everything that's grayed out is just debug info that you can use. Oh, I forgot to mention animation though. Sprint animation is the first person animation. I have a simple little thing you can use, FPS sprint montage. TP sprint animation is the third person sprint animation. I already have an animation for that too. This is from the anim pack that will come with the product, and also will be in the next version of the beta. And then death animations and hit animations. So each of these is, you can set a collection of different animations to use that will be selected at random each time you get hit. So TP hit 1, and we're just going to add each of these hit animations. There's 4 of them. 2. Oh, I meant to hit 3 and hit 4. And then death animations, there are 4. I'll just use 2 for now. And that's it for animation. And now I think the only thing we have left to do is go to capsule component over here and type in at the top, type in rep, and it'll bring up this replications thing. Go ahead and just scroll all the way down to the bottom and check this at the bottom here. And then you'll go ahead and go to character movement. There's some options you can play around with here. Clear rep. So yeah, there's some options you can play around with in this, like gravity, things like that. The only one I'm going to change for now is this one. So this is when you're walking upstairs. If you maintain your horizontal velocity, or if you slow down when you're moving up surfaces. I generally like to leave this unchecked because for whatever reason when you're walking upstairs, you'll get a little bit of lag. It's not too bad, but it's a little annoying, so I'll leave that unchecked for now. That'll be fixed later on, but for now, I recommend leaving it unchecked. And then the last thing you'll want to do is simply go down to replication and select component replicates. And then, I forgot to mention, go to your mesh 3P and go to component tick and set that to 0.01667, and also do that with the actor tick. Alright, so now we're done with setting up our character. Now we can go and compile and save it. And we can go ahead and, since we don't have a game mode set up currently, what we're just going to do is go to World Settings and go to Selected Game Mode and then set our override to the character that we just made, which is my character. Then we can go and save our map. And when we make sure you have a player start, by the way, that you can actually spawn out. So we're going to hit play, and we should just spawn right in, and boom. Sweet. So now now we're in our game. We can look around, we can jump, we can sprint too. Good stuff. And we can also go ahead and select our multiplayer, add in another player, and we can see each other. So yeah, so now we can run around, I can see him, you can see me. Pretty good stuff, right? So we can go and close that out now. I'll go and demo that 3D HUD real quick. Go to first person, example, blank blueprints, my character, and go to the 3D HUD. Ooh, that's a little so yeah, now you can see we have our 3D heads up display. We've got our timer, our health, our ammo, which we don't have again, so that's just going to be 0, and our score up at the top. Pretty cool. You'll notice that there's a bit of a kind of this flickery effect. That's because of the motion blur, and for whatever reason you cannot disable motion blur on individual objects, which sucks. So if you really want to get rid of that, just set motion blur to off for the time being. And then I'll go ahead and demonstrate you can customize that 3D HUD to use your own fonts and colors and things like that. Close these guys out. So we're just going straight to HUD. So for each of these, like one of my favorite things to do is create this kind of cool cyberpunk heads-up display. So I have a material called digital text material. That'll be included in the release. So then set that font to 7 seg and set the color to this kind of greenish color. Something like that. Yeah, that's a good one. Go ahead and save that color. And then we can go and do that for each one of these. Just set that material to digital and set that font to 7 seg and set that color to green. 7 seg, digital, 7 seg, green. Digital, 7 seg, green. Team scores, you don't want to set the color because that'll be overridden to red and blue. But we can go and do digital, 7 seg, digital. You can technically go through and copy paste these, but I guess I kind of blanked out. But yeah, you can actually go through and copy paste these. You don't have to fill it out each time. How you copy paste it is you go to 7 seg. You just click on the right click on text or right click on message and copy, and then click up here and paste. So we can go and compile, and save, and we'll go back in, and now we've got our 3D HUD, which is really cool looking in my opinion. You can play around with like the sizes and spacing and things like that. Just try, part of this is going to be like exploring and finding out like what works for you, because I can't come up with every possibility. So just go through and play around with these things. Check out, play with your scale, play with your size. Just, explore. Also, I should mention there is a bug with Unreal Engine. When you package the game, before you package the game, make sure to divide whatever this number is by 26. So if it's 26 now, when you package it, make sure you set it to 1. Because otherwise, when you package it, when you run it, your text is going to fill up your entire screen. So yeah, it's a weird bug, but that's the workaround we have for it right now. It's not us, it's the engine itself. So yeah, now we have a character, which is pretty sweet. We've got our own character that we can run around with. We can set our own animations, our own meshes, everything. So you can go ahead and play around with a bunch of the stuff. Make it work for you. Import your own meshes, rig them to the skeletons. For that, just there's some tutorials on Unreal website about how to rig the skeletons. You'll essentially just remap the bones to the default mannequin skeleton. Alright, so now that we're done with making our character, next thing we're going to do, this is actually pretty easy. We're just going to go to make our game mode. Right now we have a deathmatch game mode, but before final release we'll have a couple others that you can use. For now we're going to call this My Deathmatch. And we'll go ahead and open them up and go and set that tick rate to 0.01667. You don't technically need to do this, but I would highly recommend it because if you're playing a multiplayer game, there can be some issues with frame rate dependency. So say you have a slower computer and your frame rate sucks, your gun may not fire as fast as the guy who has a higher frame rate. So by setting that tick to a fixed rate, that ensures that won't happen, that there won't be frame rate dependencies. So the main thing you're going to want to pay attention to here is gameplay. So most of this is fairly self-explanatory. So teams enabled, whether or not you have, whether or not it's a team-based game. If it is, you'll have a red and blue team. We're going to add in multi-team support later, but right now it's 2 teams. If we check that, if we go down to materials here, we get selection materials for the 2 teams, one for first person and one for third person. And I usually set these to like red and blue. So red arms, red body for team 1, and then for team 2 we'll do blue. These are just some quick materials I made up. These will be included with the final product, so you can use these in your own thing if you really want to. Kills to win. That's just how many kills it takes to win the game. I usually set it to like, if it's a smaller game, I usually set it to like 5 or 10. Match times, this is the time of the match in seconds, so 600 seconds would be 10 minutes. I leave it usually for small games at like 180, that's just 3 minutes. This is your default player health, so however much health your player starts at when he spawns. Your max player health, which is how the maximum amount your player can have. So if you're doing like things like extra health or overshields, things like that, you'd want to set that higher. Should your health regenerate? This would be similar to a Halo or like Call of Duty type mechanic where after you get hit, your health slowly starts coming back after you take cover. There's 2 variables here, regen rate and regen delay. Regen delay is the delay between the last time you got hit and when your health starts to regenerate. I usually leave that at like 2 seconds. And then regen rate is the rate at which your health comes back. I just noticed that to like 0.5 or something. You can set it to higher or lower if you want to. And then your player respawn time is just how long it takes to respawn. I usually have that like 3 seconds. But you can set it to like 5 or 1 or whatever you want. You can close these up, and the last thing you'll want to do probably is check use seamless travel here. You don't need to, but I recommend it because it makes going between levels easier. Oh, you also want to set your classes here. So your game state class, make sure for game state you select FPS demo game state, and for player state you select FPS demo player state. Though you don't necessarily have to have them, they do some useful functions with keeping track of player health. So I do highly recommend having those set. You can leave that as is. Default pawn class, we've got select our character, and the rest of this is good to go. And then you can also set your default player name. So the default, like when you spawn in, if you don't have a name already, so we'll just call it like new player, right? I'm going to compile save, and then we can go to world settings here for our level and select our game mode here, my deathmatch. And then we can spawn in and boom. And if we want to do 2 players, you can see the team materials that we set up. So see, now we've got a red and a blue guy. We don't have any weapons to kill each other with yet, but we will get to that next episode. So yeah, this is now we've got our own character and our own game mode, right? So we can play around with that and set whatever we want. You can set it all these crazy variables, set the timer. So yeah, just go through and play around, figure out what kind of stuff you want to do with this. And if you have anything cool to show off, any suggestions, ideas, comments, things like that, you can email me at csims@thevirtualcouch with dashes in between .com, and I'd be happy to discuss it with you. So thank you all for tuning in this episode. Now I've got our next episode, episode 2. We're going to go ahead and make our own gun and probably our own projectile. This episode has been a little long. I can assure you that this will be the longest of the bunch. This is kind of just getting everything set up. So yeah, next episode, tune in. We'll go and dive right into the fun stuff, make guns, cool, bullets, things like that. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next episode. Thanks, bye.